The Sparta Board of Education regular meeting is called into order at 6:32 p.m. First of all, thank everybody for coming tonight, for your participation here in person and virtually. We will be going into a closed session later in the meeting. And Neve, can you read the meeting announcement, please?
Sure. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Sparta Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be advertised by having the date, time, and place thereof posted on the Sparta Board of Education office, 18 Mohawk Avenue, as designated by the Board of Education for posting of such notice in a public place. Written notice was emailed on January 11th, 2022 to the New Jersey Herald, the Star Ledger, tapintosparta.net, and to the Township Clerk, specifying the date, time, and place of this meeting.
Thank you, Neve. Roll call, please, Joanne.
Ms. Bragg? Mr. McKernan?
Here.
Ms. Seelander?
Here.
Ms. Collier?
Here.
Ms. Miller?
Here.
Dr. Serrano? Ms. Grano?
Here.
Mr. Morris? Here. Mr. Palesci?
Here. Thank you. Can everybody please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Moving on to Section 2, public hearing on the superintendent's contract. We're going to open up for public comments. And the public comments are only pertaining to the amendment to the superintendent contract. And as always, you'll have 3 minutes to speak, and Mr. Zimmer will give you the 1-minute warning.
Good evening. My name is Walter Knapp, Sparta, New Jersey.
Hey, Mr. Knapp.
I am commenting on Dr. Beck seeking to renegotiate his contract. I feel it's a little premature, to say the least, considering he's only been with our district for 1 year. I believe there is room for growth. I'd like to point to some recent examples as well as a personal example. There's been very poor communication around a very sensitive topic with the new curriculum. There was a lot of confusion on how it was communicated, and it seems if it was almost intentional. I'd point to the recent article in Tap Into that highlighted that issue. I've also heard that just recently there was sensitive information disclosing individuals with IEPs in the community. I work in a field where HIPAA violations such as that are very serious and would result in a fine of $10,000 for each individual disclosure. I'm not sure the number of people that were affected, but again, this is something that needs to be taken seriously, and I believe our school district could possibly face lawsuits over this major mistake. I've had my own interaction with Mr. Beck last year when Governor Murphy issued another mandate around volunteers in schools needing to be vaccinated. Dr. Beck took a much more aggressive stance outside the mandate, requiring that anyone, regardless if they were only volunteering for the school for 1 day, needed to be vaccinated. It took multiple emails between Mr. Stoner and Mr. Beck to bring Sparta's policy in line with what was required by Governor Murphy. I congratulate Dr. Beck on receiving his EDD. That, however, was something that was expected of him, and he agreed to in his contract. Sparta paid the tuition for the completion of his EDD on top of that. To now try and renegotiate a contract that was agreed to, I believe, is wrong. There were negotiations that took place that Mr. Beck was a part of and agreed to the final result in signing the contract. Again, there is room for growth. This is Mr. Beck's first job as a superintendent. I hope he stays with us. I think there needs to be a fulfillment of what was agreed to in the contract. If he feels he must go somewhere else, I can understand that and let the market bear what it'll bear. But Sparta will need to be reimbursed for what was paid to for his tuition per the contract that he signed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knapp.
Hello, Leanne Pitzer, 45 Hunters Lane, Sparta, New Jersey.
Hi, Ms. Spitzer.
Hi. Congratulations to Dr. Beck on obtaining his doctorate. Truly is a great accomplishment. The only comment I have is that our teachers received a 2.8 salary increase after an arduous negotiation period. Some of these teachers have been here for decades. Dr. Beck is requesting a raise that will bring him up to a 4% salary increase after being with our district for 1 year. I just would like to know how that is fair comparing with our teachers' salary increase. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Spitzer. Anyone else for comment?
Good evening. I'm Dr. George Thompson. I live at 567 Glen Road in Sparta.
Hi, Mr. Thompson.
Dr. Beck has requested this annual increase of 3% per year to be increased to 4% per year. At the same time, he's recommended that the board contract with the former superintendent of Newton to implement this strategic plan and ensure the skill sets of administrators are in line with district goals at a cost to the district of $19,800. I have a few questions of that. Is this a task the board should expect Dr. Beck to fulfill, particularly in light of his new academic achievement? Second question, is Dr. Beck solicit this service through the competitive bid process? Where
Sir, just so it's clear, this is a hearing on his contract, so I just want to make sure that the comments are tailored to the amendment of the contract.
But these two are related.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I know you came in late, I just wanted to make
do-
sure you were clear
yes,
on
thank
what
you
this
for-
section of the agenda was
Thank you for
about.
considering my lateness here. My third question, is there a conflict of interest in this recommendation since the former Newton superintendent served on the committee for Dr. Beck's doctorate? Will this simply be a rubber stamp of the Sparta Board of Ed administration? And thirdly, I would recommend that the contract matter for the superintendent be tabled, or the board stipulate that with his new doctorate credentials, Dr. Beck fulfill the responsibilities of strategic plan implementation administrator assessments. Alternatively, if Dr. Beck is not qualified to perform these tasks, the board needs to receive 3 competitive proposals for these services to the district to assure that the impact upon the citizens of Sparta through their taxation is minimal. Thank you.
Mr. Thompson, can you please repeat your first question for me, please? I didn't get it all written down. Sorry.
Well, let's see if, yes, my first question was, is this a task, this assignment to the superintendent of Newton, is this a task that should be expected Dr. Beck to fulfill? Part of the question in my mind as a citizen is, what is the superintendent's job? And it seemed to me that one of the things ought to be, once you got the strategic plan designed, that it would be his job to implement it. And secondly,
evaluating the administrative staff, I would think, would be a significant part of his responsibilities. So since you've contracted that out for $19,800, my question is a simple one. Why isn't he doing that? Particularly when you're discussing his contract change due to his increased credentials with his doctorate. So it just seems to me that if you've made a good decision as a board to hire a qualified individual, we don't need to go out and hire what may be another qualified individual to do a job we could do in-house at no additional expense. Any further questions from the board?
No, that's all, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else for the public comment portion? Okay, I'm going to make a motion to close the public hearing, please. Can I have a second? Neve, thank you. Discussion? All in favor, yep. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, moving on to, yeah.
First question is, should the board be contracting this individual?
Yeah, I'm gonna let Matt respond to that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I would just like to clarify Dr. Green's role in this, as a consultant in this district. Dr. Green is not the superintendent of Newton. He's retired Superintendent Newton. His job as a consultant in this district was clearly outlined in the strategic plan. It was a recommendation, clear recommendation in the strategic plan to receive executive training from a third party. So that is why we are receiving executive training. It was in the strategic plan. It would, as a result, it became part of the strategic plan action plan. And it's executive training. His role is not to evaluate administrators. That is my job, to evaluate administrators. Dr. Green will not be evaluating administrators. It is strictly executive training.
And Mr. Thompson, I'll answer your second question. As far as the bidding process goes, that was for professional services, so bids are not required under that requirement.
This is not a back and forth, sir. As to your third question, not a conflict of interest. Certainly, hiring somebody with expertise in the field who happened to serve on the superintendent's dissertation committee, among other folks, he wasn't the sole individual on the committee, certainly is not a conflict for the Board of Education to appoint somebody with well-recognized credentials and expertise. There's no conflict of interest at all on that. Sir, the public participation is closed, so we don't get into a back and forth, but we appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to 2.2, the vote on the contract. Resolved that this Board of Education hereby approves the contract amendment for Dr. Matthew Beck, which has been approved by the Executive County Superintendent of Schools, increasing the annual salary by 1%, retroactive to July 1st of 2022 and each year hereafter. Roll call, please. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay, got it. Sorry. Okay, so sorry. So that was the motion. I apologize. This is my first go around with this part of a meeting. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Neve, thank you. Discussion? Roll call, please. Ms.
Mr. McKernan?
Yes.
Ms. Seelander?
Yes.
Ms. Collier?
No.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Dr. Serrano?
Yes.
Ms. Grano?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
Yes.
Mr. Paleschi?
I abstain due to my wife being a substitute here in the district.
Motion carries.
All right, so we're going to move right on to We're going to move right on to Section 8, approval of minutes. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Neve, thank you. Second?
Second.
Vanessa, thank you. Discussion? Roll call, please, Joanne.
Mr. McKernan?
Yes.
Ms. Seelander?
Yes.
Ms. Collier?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Dr. Serrano?
Yes.
Ms. Grano?
Yes.
Mr. Morris? Yes. Mr. Pelesci?
Yes. Moving on to Section 9, Superintendent's report. Dr. Beck?
Thank you. All right, I would like to start by addressing the threat assessment team that is on tonight's agenda. So back in the beginning of August, Governor Murphy signed legislation that requires all school districts to form and train a threat assessment team. Pursuant to the law, the NJDOE, in consultation with the state law enforcement agencies and the New Jersey Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness, must develop guidelines for school district, charter schools, and Renaissance school projects regarding the establishment and training of threat assessment teams. Additional guidance received from our County Department of Education office clarified that the threat assessment teams are required for September of 2023. Grounded in research, the threat assessment team is recognized as the current best practice for preventing targeted school-based violence. I'm happy to share that Dr. Jane Esposito and Ms. Sue Lorenz have been working with the Department of Education and the Department of Homeland Security for quite some time, and they have already received training pertaining to the threat assessment teams. It is because that has already taken place that our district is on the cutting edge of this initiative, and we are able to form our district threat assessment team a year before it is required. So I wanted to give praise to Jane Esposito and Sue Lorenz for being way ahead of the curve on that and leading this for our district, which would be a model district. I'd like to acknowledge a staff member, Douglas Kraus, one of our esteemed middle school world language teachers. He was selected to present at the annual Northeast Conference on the Teaching of Foreign Languages. His presentation, titled, "If Proficiency is the Goal, Grades Have to Go," examines the poor fit between proficiency and grades in communicating growth in the world language classroom. Mr. Kraus was selected from a rather large pool of proposals, as there were 3 times as many proposals as there were presentation slots. It's another example of how our high-performing world language department is leading the way on a regional level, and I would like to congratulate Mr. Kraus on that. I'd like to recap our administrative retreat, which took place from August 8th through August 10th, where we had our annual administrative retreat in the MRC. The annual admin retreat is held for the purposes of professional development, team building, goal setting, and various other purposes. That's where every administrator in the district gets together, and it's one of the few times we have the opportunity for every administrator to get together. This year's professional development came in the form of Dr. Ken Green, who began his executive training with our district in accordance with our strategic plan, action plan. The team building and strength finding exercise we went through was great for team building and learning more about how we can best work with one another as a team, and that was just the start of his work. Next, our district security consultant presented further professional development to the entire administrative team regarding safety and security measures, the way we run our drills, communication during actual emergencies, and more. That security consultant continues to be Mr. Kevin Craig. Mr. Craig continues to be an asset to our district in a security consulting capacity. And then on day 2, we welcomed Dr. Tracy Severance, who offered training on intentional leadership and database leadership. Our own administrators also presented to the group to share their expertise on various matters. Our admin team has offered amazing feedback on all of the consultant and peer training, as well as the collaboration that took place throughout the 3-day session, and I continue to be proud to work with such a high-functioning administrative team. Speaking of the strategic plan, an update on the strategic plan. As I mentioned, as part of the administrative retreat, we are continuing to work toward executing the goals of the strategic plan, action plan. As we enter the first full year under the strategic plan, we have established building-level teams and building-level goals, as well as district-level goals, all of which were presented at the March 24th board meeting. The building-level teams will meet as we open our schools and will continue to put measures in place to achieve the goals, to achieve their individual building-based goals throughout the school year. On the district level, the executive training has already begun. The communications consultant will ramp up her work with the district as school opens, and we will begin pursuing our sustainable school certs, and we have approved our technology audit provider. These and other measures will continue to move forward, as it will be our short-term and long-term focus to execute these goals throughout the school year and beyond. Emergency plans. While we are still waiting for final guidance from the NJDOE and the NJDOH regarding this year's finalized K-12 COVID protocols, all signs are pointing to this year's restrictions being a lot lighter and a lot more relaxed. Once we receive final guidance, it will be shared with the community. In the meantime, the NJDOE continues to require that all districts create and submit an emergency plan to ensure that all districts have measures in place should they need to pivot fully to remote instruction for health emergency related reasons. Our team is currently updating last year's plan to meet this year's standards, and we'll ask for the board to approve that plan in September, as it is due by the end of September. Facilities update. Ms. Black, Chris Tappan, and I have been conducting our end of summer building walkthroughs and building principals and head custodians, along with the building principals and head custodians, on each of our campuses over the past 2 weeks. I'm proud to say that our maintenance and custodial teams in our district have once again risen to the annual challenge of preparing our schools to open. If you have had the opportunity to attend any of our open houses, you have seen the great condition our buildings are in, internally and externally. While there are still a few minor punch list items remaining, I can confidently say our buildings are ready to open and welcome back our students and staff. And lastly, as you are aware, we have many curricula recommended for board approval this evening. I would like to formally thank Mrs. Rossi, the department supervisors, our staff, and the Board of Education, specifically the curriculum committee, who have worked tirelessly to create and the revised curriculum on tonight's agenda. Curriculum writing is a rigorous task to begin with, and when you add sensitive topics to the standards that are required to be in the curriculum, the task becomes that much greater. And I just want to formally thank everybody for that. And speaking of curriculum, I will turn it over to Mrs. Rossi for a couple of notes.
I wanted to start by thanking our district professionals who have spent the last several months writing and reviewing nearly 100 different course curricula and programs across the district. Many of these revisions were mandated and several were elected as we see new opportunities to fine-tune our instructional programming so that we can present the best opportunities for our students. One focus in this work that remains a thread through all of our program development is to embed choice and varied supports for a diverse population of learners to ensure equitable opportunities. District professionals have worked to create additional options for electives, including exercise physiology and audio production at the high school. We have created more cohesive course sequences with the addition of US 2 honors. At the elementary level, we have collaborated with computer science specialists across the state, including our very own renowned high school robotics leaders, to design an integrated computer science curriculum for students in grades K through 5 that will feed our secondary programs. Our instructional team has recommitted to the implementation of the science of reading approach at our elementary levels. Our special ed programming continues to expand through the work with the Coalition for Inclusive Practices. Our intervention system has been analyzed through our partnership with Linkit, and RTI support, response to intervention, will be extended to the high school for the very first time next year. We've reviewed our gifted practices across the district, and we continue to ensure that students have access and opportunities for enrichment across the continuum. Our work with St. Elizabeth University will allow us to refine our approach to climate and culture in every school across the district. Our commitment to professional development can be seen as we align our writing practices across integral grade levels through our work with the National Writing Project. The strategic plan continues to guide our instructional efforts as we collectively work to accomplish these specific goals. It is because of these experiences and the combined efforts of district professionals that I feel confident in the opportunities being provided to students. While there will always be room for improvement, there is certainly a great deal to celebrate, and I am grateful for that. With regard to the health and PE curriculum, this has certainly been a complex instructional initiative, and we have treated it with the level of respect and dedication that it deserves. We spent countless hours ensuring that we handle this content in a way that is measured and reasonable. We haven't blindly accepted, but we've made decisions that make sense, allowing choice for families while aligning to standards, but also to our district policy. I understand that for many attempting to navigate the world of curriculum for the first time, it is complex, and I welcome you to continue to reach out with questions and concerns and conversations. I honestly have to say that I greatly enjoy the conversations that I've engaged in so far at this point in time. I've learned a lot from listening to your personal experiences and your willingness to share intimate information and varied perspectives about your life, your value system, and your personal beliefs. You sought information out to remain informed so that you could make responsible decisions for your families. I have great respect for the diverse viewpoints that make up our community, and I appreciate the strong support that has been shown during this time, even in complication. While the new health and PE standards have caused complexity across the state, I am hopeful and optimistic that this experience may result in our ability to relearn how to move forward with respect and tolerance for a diverse range of perspectives. The work of a school system and of our fellow educators is more complicated than ever before. We have been impacted by things like COVID, school safety, learning loss/acceleration, a mental health crisis, teacher shortages, and a challenging political landscape. Yet in the midst of all this, we remain strong, dedicated to our craft, and still continuously committed to serving our students. There will certainly be more challenging topics down the road, just as there have always been, but by choosing to remain engaged and united, we are choosing to support our children. Finally, I would like to respond to concerns that were presented at the last board meeting as requested. We were asked as a curriculum committee to review the book Queer, the Ultimate LGBT Guide for Teens. This is located on the Diversity Council website. It is not located under the tab for suggested reading, but can be found under the link labeled On Our Shelves. While this title cannot be accessed directly using the link, it is highlighting a diverse text that is the diverse texts that are on our bookshelves, this one specifically in our high school library. The book has been on our shelves at the high school since 2015. As per Resource Policy 2530, the responsibility for the selection of material is delegated to the certified library media personnel based on specific criteria, which is also included in that policy and has been abided by. The book is written for students 14 and older, with student editors contributing to the development of the text. All 5 student editors range from the ages of 14 to 17 years old. This is not a curricular resource and therefore not a text required to be vetted through the curriculum committee. If when there are concerns about resources, all parties must follow Policy 9130, which states that the complaint must be made in writing and submitted to the superintendent, who will then review according to established procedures. Finally, based on our website policy 0157, information on the website may contain community parent resources and information. I know that this topic will be further addressed by the curriculum chair later in the meeting. That is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you both. Now moving on to section 12, approval of the HIB report. Can I have a motion, please? Neve, thank you. Second.
Second.
Lauren, thank you. Discussion? Roll call, please, Joanne.
Mr. McKernan?
Yes.
Ms. Seelander?
Yes.
Ms. Collier?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Dr. Serrano?
Yes.
Ms. Grano?
Yes.
Mr. Morris? Mr. Pelesci?
Yes. Moving on to section 14, delegate liaison reports. Do we have any reports for tonight?
I can go first for curriculum,
Yep, go ahead, Nate.
which is going to, some of it's going to reiterate what Mrs. Rossi just said already, so, sorry for the repeat. We, at this month's curriculum meeting, we discussed the new PE standards at length, all the measures that were put into place to have it reviewed, to ensure that those teaching it were comfortable with teaching what is in the curriculum now. Also fielding any questions, ensuring that Ms. Rossi was doing that and in a timely manner, and it all seemed that, as she said, the conversations she was having were very productive. And that it took a lot of time to do this to ensure that there was something for everybody that they would be comfortable with regardless of how they feel about the new curriculum. Again, at the last meeting, when this book was brought up, we discussed that as we said that we would. And again, based on policy 2530, the selection of material is given to the certified library or media specialist, to which they need to follow specific criteria about what books to go on, can go on the shelves. Therefore, as we discovered a year or two ago, I guess, with another book when it was brought into question, when there is an issue or concern about a book, there's policy 9130 that needs to be followed, and a complaint needs to be sent in writing and submitted to Dr. Beck. And he will then take that letter and review it, and according to the procedures in place in that policy, action will be taken. In other news, the educators and everybody is preparing for the start of school. This is the first year really that COVID has taken a little bit of a step back, and it's more of a normal year, we're hoping. So everybody's excited about getting back. PD's being arranged. The first day of school, I believe you said, the first day of in-service with the teachers. There's going to be a return to teaching and learning Back to the Future PD that's been arranged, and it'll really give a time for all the educators in Sparta to collaborate with their peers. And that's all I have on curriculum. But communications, because I'm on that too, that at the last meeting was brought up for us to review the website, which is what we are doing. As you can imagine, it is a lengthy process. So we are all compiling our feedback on the website and are planning to review it in the next week or so.
I have an update for the Diversity Council. The Diversity Council and the community partner Askin and Hooker, they're looking for volunteers to help with the accessibility icon painting project, which had to be rescheduled. The goal of this 2.5 hour community event is to repaint and rebrand all of the handicap parking spots throughout the district. The event is scheduled for September 10th. The rain date is September 17th. And the projects are going to kind of be staggered across the district, and we can get this information out. It's the high school from 10 to 12:30, the middle school from 10:30 to 1, Mohawk Avenue from 11 to 1:30, Helen Morgan from 11:30 to 2, and Alpine from 12 to 2:30. So we're asking for people to sign up to register by September 7th. You can invite whoever you want, bring a friend, bring music, paintbrushes. It's here to just have a good time and promote positivity in our community. So if you can come to that, please sign up so we know how many people are going to be there. Again, September 10th with the rain date of September 17th.
Thank you.
Just shared services, the track path from the football parking lot down to the track. That's all been approved between the board and the town. Everyone's ready to go. We're just waiting on permits from the DEP. So as soon as they come in, that'll start hopefully the day after, and hopefully it's before school, so.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else? Okay, good. Moving on to public comment number 1, which is going to be on action items only. Public comments are invited on matters pertaining only to action items at this time. Please state the action item number as well as your name, municipality, and group affiliation if appropriate for the record. Each participant will receive 3 minutes to speak. There will be a countdown timer, and you will be notified when there is 1 minute remaining, and then again when time is up at the end of the 3 minutes. Speakers may not cede their time to others. This portion of the meeting is meant to hear public comment, not to have a dialogue between the board and the person speaking. The board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking and not disrupt the meeting, or you may be asked to leave. All statements should be directed to me as the presiding officer. The board or administration may respond to any questions or comments after the conclusion of the public participation.
Good evening,
evening, Jenny Derricks, tap into Sparta. I just have a quick question. The
Upstairs.
links to the curriculum, I'm talking about 17.5 just to start with, the links don't work, or you need to have a district email to sign into, at least that's my experience.
Thank you.
Just a comment on it, the district email doesn't work either with the links. The emails don't work either with the links. The sign-in doesn't, they don't work. So for the public and my district email, it wouldn't open. I didn't know that. All right.
Hi, Jen Hamilton, 37 Holland Circle.
Hi, Ms. Hamilton.
I wanted to start by thanking Neve tonight for providing us with a report on your committee meeting. I think it's super, super helpful for the public. I've spoken about this before and suggested it. I hope that other committee chairs will adopt that same open discussion or open statement, I suppose, kind of providing the minutes or kind of a rough draft of what was discussed to provide some insight to the public on the conversations that you guys have. But I think that was really helpful, so thank you for that. I wanted to just address 16.28, specifically number 11. It is a renaming of extracurricular activities, I believe, at the middle school pursuant to the contract. So my question with regard to number 11, if you're trying to get to it, number 11 is National Junior Honor Society, and I have long wondered, as a parent of an incoming freshman and a current middle schooler, why Sparta doesn't have a National Junior Honor Society in our district, and only a National Honor Society at the high school level. So today I learned that at some point we did, when I was going through that change, or going through the agenda, and I saw that is being changed from National Junior Honor Society to coding. I'm really, really excited about coding. I don't want you to get me wrong. I think that's a fantastic club to include, but I wonder if I hope it's not a staffing issue, that you don't have somebody who can cover that, and I hope you'll consider getting a charter for it again if you don't have one anymore, to include that at the middle school level, because I think it is a really nice way to recognize students who put in a lot of effort
1 minute.
at that level. So thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Hamilton.
Hello, my name is Christina Keeling-Longo. I live at 36 Summit Road.
Ms. Longo, how you doing?
I'm speaking to 17.5 on the agenda. During the course of the past 2 years, having to deal with the COVID pandemic, our children were forced to live behind a computer screen. A part of their childhood was taken from them, not only socially, but academically. We are facing a monumental learning loss on such a broad scale, which will have a huge ripple effect moving forward. I think it's imperative that Sparta administration spends its time and energy on recovering this academic catastrophe, one which has never been experienced in modern history. It's concerning to me that this is not at the forefront of our administration, and our state has shifted the focus from education to sexualization. I have a child entering 6th grade. She can barely read. How is it that learning to read is less important than learning about sexual ideologies? Sparta can still choose to focus on the learning loss. Instead of having our elementary and middle school students worrying about gender roles, gender expression and identity, their sexual orientation, oral and anal sex, let's get them back to being proficient in the basics, in math, ELA, history, science. I do think sex ed topics are important. I am a registered nurse. I understand the importance of learning anatomy and physiology. I don't have an issue with that sort of topic in the classroom, but I think there are topics that are age-sensitive and individualized.
1 minute.
My 11-year-old still plays with dolls. She builds forts. She colors. I understand other 11-year-olds may be ready to explore their gender identity. Each child is different and has a different need. How does the state determine a student's ability to take in the information based on their development and cognitive capacity? How will Sparta take individual needs into consideration? It is important to be inclusive, but not at the expense of academia. Let parents parent and let teachers teach. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello again, Walter Knapp, Stanhope Road, Sparta.
Hi, Mr. Knapp.
I'm speaking about 17.5 as well, regarding the release of the new curriculum. I'm very concerned again that this divisive topic and sensitive topic to the community was communicated so poorly. I, as well as other family members that I've spoken with, were very confused with the emails that were sent out by the district regarding the new curriculum. Family life lessons versus extended health is where the confusion mostly lay. So just to be clear, especially for the parents at home watching, family life lessons is the new curriculum and the new sexual education standards. Choosing the extended health lessons will be the option that does not include this new curriculum. I also don't understand why Ms. Rossi wasn't able to send the links to the education resources, such as TED-Ed, Advocates for Youth, amaze.org, Strategies for Equality and School Retention. Tap Into was easily able to embed those links in the article that they sent out. Why aren't the specific videos identified that will be used by each grade? Is it left up to the teacher to choose what videos they will use from their class, from those resources that were listed? I think that puts some liability on the teachers themselves in our district if they're utilizing materials that aren't outlined in the curriculum. While clicking through the family life curriculum, I noticed that there was a link to kidshealth.org. I didn't see that listed as one of the resources. After all this time in preparation, plenty of outside help and advisors, and lots of money that was spent to put this curriculum together, how can this district in good conscience think that this has been laid out transparently and clearly and communicated effectively? The curriculum as it stands as well right now is not complete. Specifically for 8th grade, it's not complete. The standards regarding defining anal, oral sex do not have lessons or resources associated with it. My understanding is that teachers must teach the standards as stated in the curriculum. It must have plans and resources. It's not listed in this curriculum. To me, that as it stands right now, this curriculum needs to be voted no, because it's not complete. Given what has transpired over the last 2 years, the detriment to public education, to me, this shouldn't even be a conversation that we're talking about right now. We should be looking at how we should be focusing resources to get our kids back up to what they lost in the past 2 years. We need to get back to educating our children on the basics, which remote learning and the lockdowns during the pandemic completely impacted. Another thing, we're a very inclusive community, I believe. Some people don't.
That's time, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knapp.
Hi, can you hear me? Juliet Sanchez. I'm a student at Sparta High School. I'm going to be talking about 1629. So that's the club stipends approval at the high school.
Hi, Ms. Sanchez.
I only noticed 2 clubs on there, and I know that there are many more clubs that would be getting a stipend based on the qualifications of the 3 years, amount of students, and so on. And so I was just wondering where are all the other clubs and the approvals for their advisors and all the things that we need to get started in September, especially considering that all the coaches have already been approved throughout the entire year, and that's already happened, but our clubs are again late to being approved as they were last year. So I'd just like to know where the other clubs are and if that's going to happen before the school year starts. Thanks, that's it.
Thank you.
Dr. George Thompson again.
And Mr. Thompson.
As I understand, public education in the United States is based upon a hierarchy where the parents of students elect a Board of Education, yourselves, to represent their interests and protect their children from external and internal threats to their well-being and safety.
Mr. Thompson, can I ask which action item you're speaking to?
I'm sorry, I should have said 17.5.
Thank you.
The board then, in turn, hires administrators to implement the board policies on behalf of the parents. The parents in New Jersey pay for the administrators through high property taxes, most of which is allocated to public education. Yesterday, the national news reported that 25 of 30 Board of Education candidates supported by Governor DeSantis won their elections to support educational programs without the threat or woke indoctrination, and rejecting the teaching of what Mr. DeSantis calls critical race theory and woke gender theory. 5 Florida districts were in fact completely flipped. Unfortunately, New Jersey does not have a governor that is responsive to the similar interests of parents as we have seen at least in Florida and Virginia. Consequently, we Sparta parents must directly assure that our Board of Education members represent our interests and not the political interests of Trenton. I'm particularly concerned about comments Sparta administrators have reportedly said about the social and sexual health sections of the New Jersey Student Learning Standards for Comprehensive Health and Physical Education. First, Assistant Superintendent Rossi apparently reported in July that there are many people who want their children to have exposure to the contents that's being developed and implemented inside the curriculum.
1 minute.
My question then is, since the curriculum had not been developed and released to the public prior to the July board meeting, how could many people know what was being developed and thereby knowingly support it? Assistant Superintendent Rossi also mentioned that there would be an opting out provision as required by the state, by the way. This will be your choice, and parents and families should not have that taken away from them. Such a shallow perspective completely overlooks the stigma placed upon students who publicly exercise this choice and are then conspicuously moved from the classroom for such discussion. Isn't such a stigma avoidance exactly what is intended for those students who may have different gender identity? In other words, such a curriculum policy simply transfers this stigma from the vast minority of students within a different gender identity to the large majority of students with a normal gender identity. It's up to this board to protect our students in that regard. Thank you.
Hello again, Caitlin Gagnon. I live in Sparta. I'm so sorry I don't have the agenda item number in front of me. I think it was 17. It's curriculum 17.5. Thank you so much. So I have actually one question and one comment. The question, I guess, would be directed for Ms. Rossi, but I would obviously just position it to the board. So from a tap into report, it seemed that 80% of 1,600 responses opted in for the new family life content. How many more responses are we expecting? And was there by any, I guess it's twofold, was there by any chance some really huge discrepancy over this confusion? Because what I understand is if you were confused, it was clarified, and immediately you weren't locked into it. You could change it right away, and I'm sure there were a couple of people that went ahead and did that from what I understand. So how many responses are we expecting, knowing that the vast majority have opted in?
We respond at the end.
Okay. And then the other thing I would say, and this is more of just a comment, I know there's a lot of push for you guys to vote down this curriculum or vote no. And I would just say that I would trust our staff, I would trust our administrators and the professionals that are actually developing the curriculum, not people who have likened homosexuality and transgenderism to schizophrenia. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gagnon.
Hi, I'm Paige Samowski. My address is in Sparta. I'm a recent graduate of Sparta High School, and I'm speaking under 19.1.
19.1, I'm sorry. 19.1, thank you.
19.1. Last January, New Jersey passed a law, A3392, that will take effect this September. This law requires a student representative as a non-voting member on the District Board of Education, a process that you have already begun with your first reading of a bylaw to add a student representative. While this law is certainly progress in hearing and valuing student voices, what I want to focus on is the spirit behind this law, the lawmaker's self-evident belief that, quote, student feedback is essential when considering policies and issues that will directly impact them, unquote. This law is a show of commitment to student voices legally, and we need to maximize the spirit of this law beyond an important but minimal student impact on stage. To do so, we also need to act on our own district spirit, notably the district core value of, quote, promoting shared civic responsibility, unquote. To accurately represent and empower all student voices, we need to create a representative body of students of different backgrounds and perspectives who can meet with the board to discuss their experience of the Sparta School District. Staying true to your core values, we should give students the opportunity to meet with you before each board meeting in a neutral and balanced environment. An environment where students are not standing below you looking up, where they don't have to speak in front of an intimidating audience, where there can be a conversation instead of brief speeches restricted to 3 minutes. In an institution designed to foster an educational, empowering, and comfortable learning environment, as your district values state, it's vital to ensure your efforts are not fruitless. There is no better way to assess the broader implications of the educational experience you're cultivating than to speak with the consumers of this education yourselves. This committee of students is not meant to endorse political ideology or gripe about every inconvenience, but to promote discussion among students and administration on how to maximize the educational experience. Importantly, Law A3392, designed to offer students, quote, a seat at the table in true democratic fashion, unquote, was unanimously supported in both the New Jersey Senate and Assembly, indicating strong support across both parties. This is not a Republican or Democratic initiative.
1 minute.
This is a common sense law that will open a line of communication between those making the decisions and those being directly affected by them. This committee is currently being organized by current and former students, but is not possible without your cooperation and commitment. As leaders in education, I want to draw your attention to the first definition of educational leadership listed on the Sparta District website, quote, strong commitment to timely communication with students, unquote. I hope you consider my speech, which has already been emailed to each of you for future reference, and I hope you consider the intention behind bipartisan law A3392, which provides a catalyst to achieve our core value of shared civic responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sasha Nelson. I'm a student at Sparta High School, and I'm also speaking on 19.1.
Thank you. Can you repeat your last name for me? I didn't hear.
Sasha Nelson.
Thank you very much.
All right. I'm going to be continuing the discussion about our vision for the partnership between the student community and the Board of Education. As a student, sometimes it can feel like my voice is drowned out by the adults around me. Right now, the parents have gotten their say in what they think is best for their children. Parent voices are very important, but at the end of the day, they're not the ones in the classroom. Of course, the parents have their child's best interest at heart, and children talk to their parents, but with parents being the sole advocate for their children, there's an inherent chance of something getting lost in communication. There are other issues that the board isn't aware of that students in this school are witnessing firsthand. My goal for this committee is to create a bridge of communication between invested students and the Board of Education. Now, you might be wondering what separates us from the Student Council. The students in Student Council already have a lot on their plate, such as organizing school events and extracurricular activities. This committee we would like to establish would focus on the academic and social climate that is occurring on a daily basis. One thing that makes this committee so important and unique is that it won't be limited to just high school students. It will be a connected committee with the high school and middle school. Now, although that sort of thing hasn't been experimented with thus far, we want all student voices to be heard. If any of you have children in the middle school, you know that there's been an issue with bullying. There are fights. There's discrimination. My brother's in the middle school, and after talking to him and his friends, I know that they're mature enough to have an opinion. They care about what's going on in their school. They just don't have an open space to talk about it. We believe it's a good time to give them an opportunity to report their experiences without the intimidation of a large audience behind them. The club will elect around 4 students to carry the discussions we had throughout the month as a group and have them report to you. Any student at any time will be able to attend our group discussions and present their concerns to this group of their peers. Additionally, we can make an online platform where they could submit their concerns via a Google form that our teacher advisor, whom we already found, would bring up at our at our meetings. We would only ask for 15 to 20 minutes of your time prior to the start of the board meeting, where the student voices can be heard not as audience members, but as equals. The families in this town elected you to do what's best for the students, but it's hard to do that without knowing the true concerns of the student body.
1 minute.
What better chance to accomplish this goal than to give us, the students, a more substantial voice? Thank you.
Thank you.
Melissa Fagerston, 10 Alder Drive, Sparta.
Hi, Ms. Fagerston.
That was great. I love that idea of that last speaker. I just wanted to speak regarding the 17.5, the curriculum. I just want to lend a voice to people who have children in the LGBTQ community. I did email the board a few weeks back, but I think it's important that my voice is also heard publicly and shared online. So I am a graduate of Sparta High School, 1994. My husband is also a graduate of Sparta High School, 1991. I have a daughter that just graduated Sparta High School last year, and I have, or 2 years ago, and I have another daughter that's graduated Sparta High School 4 years ago. When I was growing up, my best friend, her father was transgender. We did not talk about it. I never knew about it until we were adults because of the shame and the stigma that surrounded it. She never felt comfortable sharing it with me. My neighbor, who was also a very good friend of mine that I spent every day of my life with, came out when he was 42 years old. He never felt comfortable sharing that with me because, again, the stigma and the shame of it in this community. My husband's best friend in high school was also gay. He did come out, and he was beaten a few times in the locker room as a result of it. My oldest daughter's best friend, who also graduated Sparta High School, is also gay. My middle daughter is also gay. We are here, and I can tell you that we are not included. My own daughter went through hell in this high school, and this is the community that I've spent every waking minute of my life pouring my heart into. I've spent so much time in the schools, on the PTOs, running programs, coaching kids. I've spent so much time, and there are so many wonderful people here. But it is not easy to go into this school system if you are gay or transgender or
1
part
minute.
of the LGBTQ community. So it's important that you understand that it is important to have the language available to our students. As I have heard from other speakers, they were upset that there was a lack of communication, there wasn't enough direction, there wasn't enough guidance. Well, that also stands for kids having to learn about their sexuality. So I appreciate that the time and efforts that the community and the Board of Ed have put into this new curriculum. I had no problem viewing it online, thankfully, but I did feel like it was important that you know that we are here and we are not included, and we are hopeful that moving forward, our community will become more inclusive.
Thank you, Ms. Fagerson.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Sanchez, and I
Hi,
live at
Ms. Sanchez.
122 Summit Road. And I have a couple of things to speak about. First, I guess it's 17.5, and I fully support a comprehensive sex education curriculum for all of the reasons that previous speaker outlined. That is what's most important, and that is what nobody can forget. I also wanted to follow up on what my daughter mentioned. I think it's 16.29, which is the clubs, and how it is really, really important that these kids who are in clubs get the same prioritization as the sports. I've said it before, so I won't go into it again. And lastly, I don't know the number, but the hearing that was just conducted on the addendum to Dr. Beck's contract, I think as a practice, a hearing like that is really just in bad taste. Like, we don't get together and, as taxpayers, decide the salaries of police officers. Like, regular citizens don't understand the ins and outs of these jobs. They don't understand all of the aspects. We elect the board to make good decisions in that respect. And for us to get up here and kind of pontificate on what we think it's worth seems really in poor taste, and I hope it's not something that will continue on as a practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez.
Hi, my name is Colleen Vanneman. I am a Sparta resident.
Hi, Ms. Manning.
I'm going to be speaking on 17.5. This material shouldn't be taught to kids. Their education in school is meant to be their education. It's not, it's advancing beyond anatomy and physiology and basic things they should know, because they do learn that in sex ed currently. I feel, and many other parents that I've spoken to within, you know, the sports programs, things like that, because I do talk to a lot of people, they feel our school district is going in the wrong direction. We're not helping our kids advance their education so they have a solid foundation when they go into college. A lot of our kids have fallen behind. I've watched it. I've spoken to other parents. They see it. My children, when they moved to Sparta from Chatham, said they felt like they went back a school year. A whole school year. They feel like, I'm way ahead of all these kids. That's bad. They shouldn't feel like they're going behind. They should feel like they're at the same level. I feel like we should be up there in that level. We put a lot of money into a lot of different things. We're not exactly paying the lowest taxes in the state. Our kids deserve better. They deserve a better foundation, a better education, and sexuality does not take part in that. That's not helping you at all in your education, and that's what the school is supposed to be about. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's fine.
I'll be quick. I had 1 minute left, so I'll use just the 1 minute.
We're going to hold you to that.
What's that?
So we'll hold you to that.
Okay. I just wanted to comment, a prior speaker spoke to the veracity of Ms. Rossi's statement that parents had emailed her prior to the July meeting. And in case there's any question in this board's mind, that is 100% a true statement. I personally emailed Ms. Rossi to advise her that though I couldn't be present at the July meeting on the curriculum, I wanted to make sure she understood that there were parents in the community who support this curriculum. And the change in standards, the 2020 change in standards, and that we trust the educators who are putting together a well-rounded curriculum for our children. And so I wanted to make sure that there is no question in the board's mind going into this vote as to whether or not that is a true statement. I can assure you that is a true statement. And then I will just, as an aside, throw out there that as a former Floridian, I thank goodness that I am now in New Jersey and that I have a Board of Education who is going to sit and consider the needs of this community and what it is that its parents want. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Ms. Hamilton.
Scott Knoll, Sparta,
Hi, Mr. Knoll.
17.5, about the curriculum. We have a team of professional educators that are looking at the curriculum. I do believe parents should parent, and that happens at home. The kids in Sparta are going to go on into a workplace where there is diversity and craziness. They're going to go into college where there is diversity and craziness. And if we don't prepare them for the realities of that, we are doing them and the future of our community a huge disservice. I would urge you to have a curriculum that prepares kids for the real world, and I honestly don't see how that ties into the reading or writing classes. They're not related, and they're age appropriate at the levels they are. I don't understand the fuss. Regarding the other comment, I think it was 19, the clubs. Sorry if I got the number wrong. It's a little bit disappointing to see that last year the timing and the budgets and the approvals and the people for the clubs weren't appointed when the sports were, and that's a repeat. I would just urge the board to set up a timetable so that those things can get set up so that we can go into the school year with the stuff that the non-athletes do and get that kicked off, because that's where a lot of the kids find their participation and their identity. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Hi, Kate Madison, 22 Saddle Ridge Road.
Hi, Ms. Madison.
Hi. I wanted to speak on 16.1 resignations. I wanted to let the full board know that I had written board leadership, Mr. Paleshi and Ms. Grano, a couple times about reorganizing the board committees, specifically to reorganize the Personnel Committee and to remove the current chair of Personnel. My last response from Mr. Paleshi was that there would be no reorganization until after the election and the next induction. So I wanted to just let the full board know why I'm asking for that. I was the personnel chair before Mr. Morris was the personnel chair. He replaced me a couple of years ago. We were brought on to personnel to place staff in areas for a specific person, a former board member who wanted them there. I was replaced by Mr. Morris when I caught on to what was happening and saw that this was happening and started to reject this kind of treatment of staff. So going back to the resignations, I think it's pretty clear if you watch the tape from last month and by bystanders and witnesses that were here, that there was a coordinated campaign between board members, sitting board members, and people in the community who are candidates to discuss a certain book that was as a recommendation for a high school book on a diversity website that's a sub-website of Sparta Schools. This was the immediate reason I asked for the personnel chair to be removed. I think that it's an ethical violation to use targeted tactics towards staff members in order to get them to resign. I'm reading from the Code of Ethics, H&I will vote to appoint the best qualified personnel available after consideration of the recommendation of this chief school administrator, and I will support and protect school personnel in proper performance of their duties. This was a direct violation of the I of the Code of Ethics, and the board needs to take responsibility for what's happening with this mass resignations and reorganize the Personnel Committee unless you want to make a specific statement that this is the result that you want coming out of the Personnel Committee.
Thank you, Ms. Madison.
Thank you for the opportunity to add additional comments. Again, on, I think it's 17.5. I'm very sensitive to the comments that were made by those who have family experiences that are negative in the context of the sexual and gender issues. I have 7 children with disabilities that I've raised, all of whom have gone through the Sparta school system, and we had to fight for each of those children and their unique needs the whole time by working with administrators and their teachers. Never did we think of revising the entire curriculum to meet the needs of our children. The issues on this gender theory are real, and the board needs to consider what's the best way to revise this. What I was suggesting to you, it's not changing the whole curriculum for the large percentage of students that don't have an issue with this, to accommodate those, the smaller percentage that do have an issue. But what are the other options that can be brought into play that represent the needs of both parties, the minor party and the majority party, and changing the entire curriculum. When I looked at some of the things that are being taught to kids in 2nd grade or the 5th grade or the 8th grade, those are things that most adults don't talk about because they're sacred, because they're personal, and it remains the responsibility of the parents to deal with it. My view would be that if there are issues with people with different gender preferences that are being abused in the schools, the school can deal with that through disciplinary processes and working with the parents whose kids are doing the abusing. But you don't have to change the whole curriculum. And so my challenge to the board is in protecting both entities, not just because the state's requiring you to have a social and sexual health component in the curriculum. I think that's a huge mistake, because the next issues are, what are you going to do with the bathrooms? Are we going to have gender-related bathrooms? And all of the issues that come out of this in a progressive sequence. This is just the beginning. So my request to the board is that this be resisted at the first step and look for an alternative that doesn't change the curriculum.
1 minute.
I think in the last board meeting in July, the superintendent mentioned that was asked, the board, actually one of the board members asked, was the alternative of not having this sexual gender theory in the curriculum ever discussed? And the superintendent said no, it wasn't discussed because we don't give the staff alternatives to opt out of teaching a certain type of history. This is not the same as that. We're talking about ethics, we're talking about religion, we're talking about spiritual issues that should remain in the family. And if the district has to work with individual families, you have to work with my family to improve my perceptions of it, then work with me. But don't change the whole curriculum that everybody's going to pay an expense for. And it's going to bring issues into families that don't have the issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
We didn't say we wouldn't allow others.
Yeah, we're not.
But we would like to give people who have not had a chance, obviously, to speak first, so
Gladly. Anyone?
just checking. Ma'am, go ahead.
Good evening, Debbie Gilmartin, Sparta.
Hi, Ms. Gilmartin.
So I want to go off of what this gentleman was saying because my thought was exactly the same. At the last board meeting, at the end of the meeting, one of the board members asked Ms. Rossi if she considered not, since she didn't have everything in order, not doing this program this year. And she said, no, it wouldn't be fair to the people that want the program. Well, those of us that don't, are we lesser? Are our tax dollars not the same as the people that want it? And then to follow up on what this gentleman said, you have people in this district, diabetics, epileptics, autism, ADHD, but parents aren't asking you to change the curriculum. They're not asking you to paint murals on the walls. This is not the way to move about this. We need to look at it. It's not up to the government to indoctrinate our children. And the end, all I see at the end of this, the end goal, is to make pedophilia not a crime. And when you look at that, we never got the names from the Epstein customers. It's because it's people in high places. They don't want you to know they're pedophiles. So they're out there with all their money and all their power. And we hear now that they're no longer pedophilias. They're minor attracted people. We're going down a very, very slippery slope. And I would recommend to everyone to read the book School of Darkness.
1 minute.
Bella Dodd, School of Darkness. It's from when the teachers union first started and how the communists invaded it and how they ran everything. Please, just take a look at it. I don't understand why we're handing our children over to the government. When has the government ever known more about your child than you do? I mean, really think about it. There are children with all different sorts of afflictions. And I'm sure that the people with epilepsy or diabetes, those kids probably worry about having a medical episode in school and how they would be perceived. Everybody has something. And we need to treat every single person, every single child as a human being. And I don't care what their
That's time, ma'am. Thank you.
preference is.
Thank you, Ms. Gilmartin. We're going to allow 3 more comments, and we've got an agenda to get through, and we do have another public comment later on in the meeting as well. So, no, that's what I said. We'll allow 3 more comments for this portion. And
Mine's
then we'll-
about the curriculum, 17 point whatever, Dana Galino.
Thanks, Galino.
I just want to comment on a couple of things. So number one, to that woman who asked about the government, we go to the government school, so that is why the
Can you address
government
your
makes
comments
these
to the chair,
rules.
please?
Number two, regarding all the people up here who were talking about homosexuality being akin to epilepsy, I think she mentioned DH, some other sicknesses. You were saying your kids in special education. That is not gender identity nor gender orientation. For everyone saying that these kids are in the minority, you do not know that. For everyone saying that the people that voted for this, the majority of people that went for family life, you're wrong when you're saying that it's the minority. And for everyone who does not want their children to get what they think is this terrible lesson, you can opt out. Nobody is forcing you to have your children taught these lessons. For the people in Sparta that do want the lessons, you're not allowed, because we live in New Jersey, you're not allowed to take that away from us. So just make a choice for your own family. I'll make a choice for my own family. And I really hope that these meetings stop being just blatant forms of homophobia. We have got to stop that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Galino. Two more comments. Yep.
Walter Knapp again.
Mr. Knapp.
So since we're kind of talking about personnel, as Ms. Madison brought up, I do want to reference the June 7th meeting, the special meeting, where Mr. Kircher was on the agenda.
Mr. Knapp, which agenda item are you speaking to, please?
I'm not sure which personnel item on the agenda.
Are you talking about the resignations?
Yeah, resignations, that's it. However, it was clear to everybody that was watching at home that there was something up when a larger than normal crowd was present. I also noticed in watching the video that Ms. Grano had asked the attorney if they could vote on giving Mr. Kircher tenure again. This was the second vote that took place on Mr. Kircher. It was already voted no for his tenure. Mr. Zimmer, the attorney, said it would be discussed in an executive session, to where Ms. Grano said out loud to the audience, "Sorry," and mouthed it to certain people in the audience. It was clear that this was not a surprise vote. So after voting down Mr. Kircher's tenure in April, just 6 weeks later, it seems that Ms. Grano felt it should be something that should be surprise put on for everybody to vote on again. So these were 2 tenure votes that I think divided everybody pretty significantly on the board from what I could tell. And with him resigning, I think it's just funny. So we made such a stink about getting him tenure when he turns around and resigns. So I hope it was worthwhile for the divisiveness that took place over that vote, that second vote, after he was already voted no.
1 minute.
Maybe next time, Ms. Grano, I wouldn't be so obvious that you're working with other folks in the audience, as Ms. Madison, I think, kind of referenced before as well. To me, it's very off-putting what took place there. And I think it was kind of obvious and ridiculous the way that whole thing went down. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knapp. This is the last comment we're going to take for this portion of the
Brad Prohl,
public
Sparta.
comments.
Just wanted to make a comment. I think it's very rude to say that people are homophobic because they don't agree with the curriculum that is there. That is not the case from a majority of parents. They are very inclusive. What's not inclusive is telling a student you have to opt out because other people want to hear this curriculum. Just so you know, I've removed my student from this school district because the nice divisiveness that this board has created through through these folks around here and letting all of this, anger and frustration and making it political. It's enough. Teach our kids a proper education, and who cares about the sexual curriculum? Doesn't need to be changed, doesn't need to be, manipulated or whatever, and it's not homophobic just because people don't agree with it. So stop creating divisiveness in this community. It's enough. You guys all got to grow up. We're all in it together. We are neighbors, so stop.
Thank you, Mr. Prohl. I apologize. I am going to allow one more comment because I know Ms. Madison had another comment that I had originally was going to allow her to speak. So this will be the last comment for this comment session.
I mean, I can't throw away 3 minutes, so. Trying to gather my thoughts from all of that, but I wanted to really stick with the resignation topic, and I wanted to just point out that we've been coming, when I say we, a group of parents and people who are concerned have been coming to board meetings pretty consistently since now it's going on a year. Last August was the fateful CRT football field meeting that wasn't recorded, unfortunately. And a lot of us have gotten more and more involved since that meeting. Last year, at the beginning of the year, we lost Dr. Saskia Brown to resignation. We then lost Kate Brennan to resignation. We lost Mary Hassenplug to resignation/retirement. We lost Scott Kircher at the end of this year. There's a way to handle getting rid of staff members as a board member when you know you can't do it because of tenure laws, or you know you can't do it because you would be going against the advice of the superintendent, and that's what this Board of Education has been doing for years. And I was a part of it, and I'm not anymore, and I've apologized to the people whose lives I've harmed from when I was a part of it. But what I'm saying is the personnel chair is the most important and powerful person on the Board of Education, and I learned that from Dr. Robert Zawicki. And it's true, and that's what's happening, and that's why he's sitting there. Because if a measure doesn't make it out of personnel, for the most part, you are either not going to know unless you're scouring the minutes and talking to personnel members, or if someone talks to you about it, you're not going to know that that conversation didn't make it out. And you're not going to know that 2 board members, in this case for the last
1
2
minute.
years, Kim Bragg and Kurt Morris, are picking and choosing what they want to have happen with specific staff members to the detriment of this school district. There is going to be a point where people, highly competent educators, will no longer even bother to apply for positions at this school district because of the reputation that this personnel committee is earning throughout the county and throughout northern New Jersey. And it's only going to get worse when lawsuits come about and ethics violations, which are coming. So I am pleading with you, please do the right thing. If it doesn't matter because you all have the same say, take him off, put someone else on, and let's see how things change in this district.
Thank you, Ms. Massey. Motion to close public comment number 1. Neve, thank you. Second?
Second.
Lauren, thank you. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Do you want to address?
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I have a follow-up on a few of the questions that were presented. For Ms. Hamilton and the renaming of clubs, what you're seeing on the agenda tonight is something that has happened in the past, where in the past, National Junior Honor Society was not running, so they took that slot and they gave it to another extracurricular stipend, hence the renaming. It's a misnomer. Renaming is a misnomer, if that makes sense. But I am happy to say that National Junior Honor Society is back in this contract under its regular name. So I just wanted to clarify that, and I appreciate you bringing that up to clarify. To Ms. Sanchez and Mrs. Sanchez, all of the extracurriculars, the co-curriculars, were approved in July. They were on the July. If you go back to the July agenda, you will see a huge chart with all of them being approved. The 2 that you see on here were not filled last month, and they got filled since. Believe me, what happened in last August was it was loud and clear, and we learned. And yes, you too. Yeah, you brought it up as well. So just wanted to clarify that. Go back to July, you'll see everything that was approved. The big list is there. To the 2 young ladies, Paige and Sasha, I was able to, just as the board meeting was starting, was able to see, just glance over your email. I'll read it more deeply. But we would definitely have a Board of Ed representative in accordance with policy and with law. In fact, I'm working with Mr. Zittimer as to how we can properly do that, that we are complying with the policy. Over the past year, we have heard from many students and many parents at board meetings about giving students a voice. We have tried to improve that over the past year by having students be part of different committees and having the principals engage the students more, particularly on the middle school and high school level. Our strategic planning, building-based strategic planning committees included students. So we're trying to include more students because we heard loud and clear through the past couple of board meetings. This latest suggestion will absolutely be considered. I can't speak on behalf of the Board of Ed. I can speak by saying that we are looking for ways to increase student involvement, and I will work with Mr. Paleshi and the rest of the Board of Ed regarding your latest request once we really get to read it. No problem. And I'll make sure I didn't miss anything from my point of view. Those were the notes that I had to clarify a couple of the actual questions. I'm sure Ms. Rossi has a couple clarifying points on some of the curriculum matters.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to try to collect my thoughts and answer everything that was presented tonight. So first, what I want you to know is just because I was tasked, and not just me, but schools across the state are tasked with this initiative, does not mean that we weren't empathetic to what this means, and does not mean that we accepted anything that the state recommended blindly. So we are not making decisions that are forced upon us. We are making decisions based on reflecting and analyzing what's been asked of us and creatively handling various ways of dealing with meeting these not only standards as we see we can, but also our district policy. So we have a district policy 2422, comprehensive health and physical education, that calls for these mandates to be taught. We also have a policy 2200, curriculum content, that does also mandate a program for family life education. So these are not recommendations by parents. These are standards passed down at the state level that we've made measured decisions regarding those standards. I also want to say that in forums like this, it does feel divisive sometimes. There are a lot of people that have very different viewpoints, but what I want you to know is there are not two viewpoints on this matter. There are many people that I've spoken with who aren't comfortable speaking in public. They aren't comfortable posting online, but they do have viewpoints, they do have interests, concerns, and they want information. I've been speaking to all of those people on all sides of this topic, and they're rational, reasonable, and I very much respect their views. As someone said earlier, a lot of people who are selecting the extended health lesson, which is the new curriculum, it is the alternative to family life, but it is not the old curriculum. The new curriculum does include old standards, but it is the new curriculum. Many people who are choosing that because they believe that these topics should be handled in their home, or they're concerned for how their child might feel in the classroom, or they have views and values that might contradict or butt up against what the standards call for. And we completely understand that, and they've been supportive and grateful that they have an option and an alternative that we're taking very seriously. And the reason we're not calling it an opt-out was based on community feedback, because we want to be inclusive. And I was a special ed teacher for many, many years, so that hits a nerve for me that our children who are our families who are selecting the extended health lesson, they're not being excluded from instruction. They're being provided a really relevant and considerate program that replaces the family life unit. And our families who are selecting family life are selecting that because they recognize a changing landscape in our society, and they want those concepts to be taught by trained health professionals. So while there is divisiveness sometimes on social media and in public forums, the vast majority of people that I've spoken with all are productive, positive members of our community, and I'm proud of our community, and I'm proud of the work of our professionals. The word indoctrination keeps being used, and I understand, but indoctrination is when you're forcing views on someone else without having a choice. We're doing the exact opposite of that. We're providing choices, and we're doing that across the curriculum. So we're talking about family life, and we're talking about the health and PE standards, because that's what people have questions about. That is one of nearly 100 curricula we have spent time developing. So it's not our focus. We certainly focused on it, but it's not been, while we're highlighting that in these conversations, we've spent a great deal of time focused on learning loss, learning acceleration. We've developed data teams at schools so we can proactively analyze all kinds of student information, not just academic, attendance information, social emotional needs, behavioral patterns, so that we can support students across the board. A few other things I just wanted to note. When we talk about an incomplete 8th grade curriculum, the 8th grade curriculum only entails what we will be teaching. It doesn't include what we won't be teaching. So when we talk about the standard like anal sex, we are not talking about what that is. We are talking about the fact that it relates to the core idea in the curriculum of STDs. And so I spoke about that at the last meeting. STDs we've been trained to handle that standard in a way that suggests that STDs have short-term, long-term, and lifelong consequences, and they can be transmitted through oral, anal, or vaginal sex. That is a safety concern. That's how it will be handled. And if that's something that you're not comfortable with, we completely understand, and there's an alternative lesson for you to participate in. Going back to the selections and the request for parents to make a choice, at a time when volume was high on Genesis, when teacher placements were being put out and schedules were available, that was so we could collect a volume of responses so that we could be prepared operationally to know how to serve students, to ensure that no one was left out, ostracized, pulled out of classrooms, assigned to a space that was inappropriate for them. And those decisions, those options can be changed at any point by contacting the principal. That was mentioned in my letters, and that was, again, that language was specific so that people didn't feel like they were being left out through using language such as opt-out. But to be clear, the extended health lesson is the alternative to family life. It is where students will receive instruction on other topics exclusive from the family life, social, sexual health standards. I want to just quickly respond to the fact that, like, how do we have these numbers? We did release our drafts as requested because we are willing to be transparent and show you everything that we're trying to accomplish. That was at the beginning of the month. The Tap Into article was released last Friday, and parents had access to see their student schedules on Genesis towards the middle of the week. So we were able to start looking at preliminary numbers. Those can change. We're not really sure to what degree that those will be stable, but right now, after checking with the tech department, we're still waiting for 79 responses. Lastly, with regard to links, a large majority of people were able to access links. So if at any point in time you can't access a link, please let me know. I added an additional link in our board packet tonight, or in our, if you go online. So there's 2 different ways you can access the curriculum right now. If you need help with that moving forward, you can reach out to me at any point, and I'm happy to help you with that. I think that pretty much sums up everything I have to say.
Thank you.
It's working now. It's working.
So there was a question earlier about the public hearing and why we had a hearing on Dr. Beck's contract amendment. New Jersey law requires that whenever a Board of Education amends, alters, renegotiates a contract for a superintendent of schools, we do legally have to have a public hearing on that before the vote. So that was something that was statutorily required. So my suggestion is, if you think it's a bad idea, the folks to reach out to would be your local legislators.
Thank you. All right, moving on to section 16.
If I can just make comment quick. I just want on Ms.
Sorry.
Matson's comments. I disagree with everything that she said, and they were all false and exaggerated.
Good. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Moving on to section 16, personnel and policy. We're looking to move items 16.1 through 16.45. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Sorry, who was that? I didn't see.
Motion,
Lauren,
Lauren.
thank you. Second?
Second.
Neve, thank you. Discussion? Roll call, please, Joanne.
Mr. McKernan?
Yes.
Ms. Seelander?
Yes.
Ms. Collier?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Dr. Serrano?
Yes.
Ms. Grano?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
Yes.
Mr. Pleshy?
Yes. Okay, moving on to section 17. We're looking to move numbers 17.1 through 17.12A. 17.12A was an addendum to this evening's agenda. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Neve, thank you. Second?
Second. Me.
Wendy, thank you. Discussion?
I just have a follow-up. The question I had last meeting about you speaking to the teachers and giving them options, was that done?
Yes, I have been giving them updates over the summer, so after our meeting, I did provide another update, and in that, I shared that if you have specific concerns beyond, just preparing for a new curriculum, but if you have specific individual concerns, to please reach out. And the feedback that I received from that was only positive.
All right, thank you.
Good. Roll call, please, Joanne.
Mr. McKernan?
Yes.
Ms. Seelander?
Yes.
Ms. Collier?
No to the adoption of the NJSLS Comprehensive Health and Physical Education Standards. Yes to the remaining items.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Dr. Serrano?
Yes.
Ms. Grano?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
Yes, no to 17.5.
Mr. Pelesci?
Yes. Okay, moving on to section 18. We're looking to move numbers 18.1 through 18.16A. 18.16A was also an addendum to this evening's agenda. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Neve, thank you. Second?
Second.
Patrick, thank you. Discussion? Roll call, please. Joanne?
Mr. McKernan?
Yes.
Ms. Seelander?
Yes.
Ms. Collier?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Dr. Serrano?
Yes.
Ms. Grano?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
Yes, no to 18.10.
Mr. Pelesci?
Yes. Okay, moving on to section 19. Do we have any old business? Section 20, any new business? Nope. Okay, moving on to section 21, public comment number 2. The board uses the second public comment period to invite comments on all matters pertaining to the school district. Please state your name, municipality, and group affiliation if appropriate for the record. Each participant will receive 3 minutes to speak. There will be a countdown timer. You will be notified when there is 1 minute remaining, and then again when the time is up at the end of the 3 minutes. Speakers may not cede their time to others. This portion of the meeting is meant to hear public comment and not to have a dialogue between the board and the person speaking. The board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking and not disrupt the meeting, or you may be asked to leave. All statements should be directed to me as the presiding officer. The board or administration may respond to any questions or comments after the conclusion of the public participation. Do we have anybody for public comment number 2?
My name is Paige Samowski. I spoke earlier. Once again, I live in Sparta, and I'm a recent Sparta High School graduate. As someone who sat in on a sex education class at Sparta High School, I wanted to clarify that this class did not corrupt or indoctrinate me. This class was actually incredibly important in that it directly related to my personal safety and identity without the misinformation students can easily and unknowingly find on the internet. The course didn't teach me about pedophilia or communism. It taught me about birth control options and helped me understand my menstrual cycle. I truly do not understand the danger in learning how to care for myself. Saying that the entire student community shouldn't be taught education because select parents do not want their kids to learn it until they're older is like saying math classes should be cut for everyone because they don't want their kids to learn basic multiplication until they do taxes. If parents don't want their kids to learn sex education now, they cannot enroll their child. That's up to them. But they shouldn't have the right or power to decide what other kids learn, especially when they haven't been sitting in the classroom and hearing the lessons themselves. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Michael Ruffino, 13 Butternut Way, Sparta.
Hi, Mr. Ruffino.
My family and I have been a member of the community now for about 4 years. I have 3 daughters that are in Sparta schools. My oldest just joined the high school last year, and she joined actually the Sparta Marching Spartans. It was fantastic to just watch her and watch the Spartans perform. The level of precision and the playing of the band was just absolutely amazing. You guys might all be aware they finished first in all but 2 events last year, which was just absolutely phenomenal. Just what the directors did was just, amazing. It was just, something that we never had experience with. So the reason I'm here is because one of the main challenges actually didn't occur on the field last year. It was more in the parking lot. It's associated with what the band had to deal with respect to renting a box truck. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. But week over week, they actually had to rent a box truck. And last year, think about what we dealt with, pandemic, availability of the van or the box truck was not there. So parents scrambled to get all the set materials and the band gear into their own personal vehicles. We had flats, breakdown of vehicles, slash the batteries dying. So the question I have particularly is, I think there was funds requested for a trailer, and just curious as to what actually happened with the funds request. Was it approved or not? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you again. Debbie Gilmartin, Sparta, New Jersey. So the New Jersey Teachers Association this year had a instruction at Rutgers for their teachers saying that teaching is radical and it is political. And they also gave instructions to teachers to dress up as drag queens for pre-K through 3rd grade. And I just want to know what our board and what our school district will do if you're expecting this, and if it is happening, is there going to be any consequence, or will the parents know ahead of time that there's going to be a drag queen story hour? And I also have another question, and I know that you can't answer it right now, but I was wondering, for children that are in contained classrooms, how is this sex ed, are they going to have the opt-in, opt-out in the contained classrooms? You know, for like the special ed? And there was one other question I had, but can't remember it. But thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi again, Leanne Pitzer, 45 Hunters Lane, Sparta, New Jersey. I wanted to discuss some of the concerning changes that are occurring at Alpine Elementary. Both of my sons have been or are currently students in the pre-K self-contained classroom starting at the age of 3. The program that Alpine offers to these students is truly exceptional. From the case managers to the teachers to the aides, the BCBAs, and the therapists, it has literally been life-changing for my sons and for our family. We are beyond grateful for all that they do. Since 2019, the class schedule has been the same, Monday through Thursday, 9 to 3:45, and Fridays, 9 to 1. The early dismissal on Fridays was to give the staff involved with the program the necessary time to conduct their weekly meetings. I was informed at the end of this past school year that the class schedule will be changing to Monday through Friday, 9:50 to 3:45. This has negatively impacted our family, as I now cannot continue with the job that I had that was dependent on the regular pre-K self-contained class schedule. I would imagine that any working parent or caregiver that have children in this class have also been negatively impacted. I would hope that in the future, such drastic changes would be discussed with the families affected, or at least give the families an opportunity to give feedback before the change is decided on. My son is neurodiverse, and I do not have the luxury of dropping him off at a local daycare for an hour because they cannot meet his needs. I also have been informed that due to overcrowding in Alpine School, art and music classes will now be on carts and take place in the students' classrooms instead of designated classrooms for each, which means that our young students will be in the same classroom setting the majority of the day other than lunch, recess, and gym days. I know when I was a student, I loved going to a new classroom for my specials, as they were called. These young students won't have the benefit of a change of scenery, which some might consider a necessary brain break. Their teachers won't be able to conduct their prep time in a quiet classroom. Additionally, many staff members have had to relocate to the stage instead of having an office or classroom. I'm requesting an informative update on the feasibility study that was discussed during the strategic plan, as there hasn't been any information shared with the public recently. We are, and have been for countless years, desperately in need of new or rebuilt elementary school buildings. I cannot understand why this always seems to be placed on the back burner while so many other projects have been addressed, completed, and paid for. Our students, teachers, and staff are beyond deserving of adequate, safe, healthy, and well-built school buildings. This should be one of the most important issues that our district should be focusing on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pitzer.
Our speech is long, so we brought up 2. Dana Galino.
Hi, Ms. Galino.
We'd like to start by acknowledging the disappointment that we have when we think of what our district's Board of Education has become, and the far worse potential of what our board could become if current members, including some of those running for re-election, remain unchecked. During the July board meeting, we watched board member Ms. Bragg ignore a constituent, Dr. Lewis, during public comment so that Ms. Bragg could pull up the book Queer on her tablet. We then watched as she hijacked the meeting in order to discuss her personal feelings at length. Ms. Bragg lied when she called the book a one-clicker and spent over 10 minutes talking about how furious the contents of the book made her feel. So we asked the rest of the board, why were you all just sitting up in silence when your board member violated policy, and what will you do about it? Is there not one of you willing to stand up and shut this nonsense down when you see and hear it? For the 1 millionth time, book vetting is not a part of your job. After the meeting, Ms. Bragg went on to disparage a fellow candidate on our campaign slate, Jen Grana, by spreading lies about her former training as a board member. Some residents blindly accepted this as fact and proceeded to share. Ms. Bragg has since admitted her statements were false and inaccurate, issued a retraction on social media, and encouraged Jen to share it. We raised our concerns to Board President Craig Paleschi, and we were told her behavior was being investigated, but Ms. Bragg would not be stepping down, and whether the board recommended it was unknown. So here's what we are left with. Ms. Bragg's behavior is unethical. She touts her extensive training but habitually violates your code of conduct. She does not uphold the confidentiality that she is bound to. But above all, her words at the last meeting and those about our colleague are untrue. It's misinformation, and board member Ms. Bragg must be held accountable for spreading it. While some of you allow or apparently even collaborate with members of the public to hijack these board meetings, we do wonder what it is you are trying to accomplish. But while we can't reason with it, ultimately we're left with much speculation in the following facts. You are driving teachers, some of our best, out of our district, losing the respect and trust of the Sparta public and crushing the morale of our educators. You are wasting your time and hours on issues outside of your jurisdiction, ignoring the issues that deserve your immediate attention, and undermining our district's professionals by incessantly challenging the resources they have carefully selected. You are creating knee-jerk reactions through policies like the latest field trip policy that will have profound consequences for our students and staff, and rejecting the recommendations of your superintendent. You are failing us, and to every one of you on that board that remains silent when your colleagues are deliberately doing these things, you are complicit. Someone must be brave enough to say something.
Thank you, Ms. Galino.
Caitlin Gagnon, I hope my 3 minutes starts now,
Hi,
right?
Ms. Gagnon.
Okay. To follow up, if this continues, it won't just be our board meetings that are being taken over, it will be our Board of Education itself. There are 6 open seats in the upcoming November election. 2 members of this board are running for re-election on an incumbent slate of 6 in total. That slate, including at least 1 member on the current board, has very concerning ties to groups in New Jersey that are calling for the mass politicization of school boards across our country. One of these organizations, Arise New Jersey, vilifies New Jersey teachers and the unions meant to protect them, encourages baseless lawsuits at every turn, and provides a literal blueprint for how to take over your school board. Members of that slate are following that blueprint. This is extreme, it is concerning. The posts and affiliations we've uncovered on these pages are even more extreme and concerning. We cannot allow outside influences like political and religious groups to infiltrate our district by influencing policy development through our board members, current or future. That is their goal. Every time members of the current board allow these meetings to descend into chaos without any relevance to the board's actual function, those extreme groups are applauding you. You're literally providing their platform. And we're not simply talking about personal political affiliations or preferences here. We're talking about deliberate attempts to change, thwart, and privatize public education itself. Unlike some members of the aforementioned slate, we can say that our children have and will continue to attend Sparta's public schools. We don't send them to private school because we want them to receive a public education. We need to restore the meaning of those words in our community. Public education. This does not mean catering to one ideology. This means providing for and advocating for all. We denounce when members of the board or members of the public use pride events like the screening of Always Jane to support their self-claims of "I'm not homophobic," only to use that event as an excuse to target a professional educator's recommended reading list and to completely fabricate the age recommendations and availability of such a resource to our students. We denounce when board members make comments about some of our most decorated teachers in public comment by saying, quote, "Now we're stuck with this guy." To members of the board who claim to be perpetually the victim, these are actual attacks. There is a huge difference between being attacked and being held accountable. You are attacking our professionals. We are holding you accountable. You ran for public office. You took an oath. You put yourselves in those chairs by choice. It is our duty to hold you accountable. To the members of this board who are helplessly standing by in all of this, it is your duty to do the same. Do something about this disaster before we lose more educators, before we lose funding, and before our district no longer contends with the best of the best in New Jersey. We encourage residents to do the same by voting in the upcoming election. The future of our district and public education itself depend on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Geiger.
Hi, Liz Sanchez again.
Hi, Ms. Sanchez.
I appreciate Mr. Zitterman letting me know that the hearing is mandated by the state. I was not aware of that, so fair enough. I won't bring it up again. I do think that when people come up here to object to the state standards, you might also want to inform them that they should take it up with Trenton, because there are certain things you have control over and there are certain things you don't. And I think it would be nice if everybody got that same amount of information. I would appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez.
I just felt the need to, sorry, Kate Madison, 22 Saddle Ridge Road. I just felt the need to continue my topic of the last board meeting and the subsequent resignation that happened as a result of it. And I wanted to also mention that I had requested a meeting with Mr. Pileshi and Dr. Beck and Neve Grano, if possible. And I'm just letting you know that I am available to verify and to talk about my personal experiences as the personnel chair before Mr. Morris took over and after Mr. Morris took over. And I'm available to share that because none of what I said is false. It all happened and it's all currently happening, and I vowed to share my experience until it's no longer relevant, and it's still relevant because I was there, I witnessed it, and I'm witnessing it happening. I wanted to share with you a text message from Dr. Zawicki from April 29th, 2020, when we were talking about the resignation or trying to obtain the resignation of Dr. Rossi.
Ms. Madison, I just want to interrupt for 1 second. To the extent this is information you learned that was confidential information, when you were a board member, you should be very mindful. I don't know what you're about to say, but I just want to make sure that there's no breach of confidentiality because there were some very sensitive personnel matters at the time.
Yes, there's no breach of, I appreciate that, and there is no breach. I just wanted to relate this to the tactic of using resignation as a way to target a staff member. That's all. Okay, so it starts with rope-a-dope. Dr. Zawicki says rope-a-dope. Need an artifact. I say, we have artifacts. He says, rope-a-dope. I say, I don't know what you mean. He says, we get him to resign by threatening certificate. No payout. I say, everything is a calculation. Ugh. He says, yup, I'm from Hudson County. That happened, that continued to happen, that was happening. The recommendations that were coming from Mr. McQueenie were not coming directly from him. They were coming from Dr. Zawicki. And Mr. Morris was there to carry them out, And it's still what's happening with Ms. Bragg and Mr. Morris. And again, if anyone wants to hear more about my personal experience, I'm trying to save the education of the kids in this school and to also save the reputation of this school before it's too late and this kind of behavior takes even more of a drastic turn. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Madison. Anyone else for public comment number 2?
Different emphasis with these comments.
State your
I
name, sir.
understand that.
Name.
You can state your
I'm
name.
sorry, George Thompson.
Thank you.
I understand that this November, that 6 members of the board will be considered by the public in the vote. And for those who are here in attendance and those who might be on YouTube, I'd like just to emphasize that this is a golden opportunity for the citizens to influence the board and its priorities. It's our responsibility to select the board, and this is an unusual circumstance where the direction of the board could be changed. And in particular, I've emphasized that related to this state mandate where we have opted in as a district as opposed to opting out as a district, that this is a way that parents and families can retain that responsibility within the family if they get out to vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Can I have a motion to close public comment number 2, please?
Motion.
Wendy, thank you. Second?
Second.
Vanessa, thank you. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
I just want to follow up on 2 of the comments for the gentleman that spoke about the marching band. I didn't get your last name. I didn't hear it properly. But I do remember having a general conversation with somebody at a football game about a trailer. I don't remember any kind of formal request. So what I'm asking you to do is please email me and give me that information, and let's open/keep the discussion going regarding that. Okay. And then Ms. Pitzer requesting a update regarding the feasibility study. So the feasibility study is complete regarding when our architects came in and they had to, they went through all our buildings, right, with a fine-tooth comb, and what they basically came up with was a report. And the outcome of that report was it would be more feasible to build a new building than it would be to necessarily dump a lot of money into repairing the older elementary schools as we have them. So that part of the report was completed. And we are now in the phase of looking at what that new building would look like and where in the township that new building would go. So that's the next phase, and that's where we're at right now. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hold on, wait, so sorry. I just wanted to reiterate, there was a question about our students receiving special education programming, and they do, regardless of their setting, they have access to the same curriculum that all of our students, the same equal opportunities that all of our students do. So they also will have choice, and those families also will have choice in that matter.
Thank you. Good, moving on to go to the order. Does anybody have? Go ahead.
I just wanted to thank all of the, as back-to-school season is upon us and happening very soon, just having a lovely conversation also with my colleague prior to the meeting. Just wanted to thank all of the teachers, the administrators, and the custodians for readying the buildings and for opening up the buildings to the children and the families, for all of the open houses. I know it's such a fun time spent in the classroom, in the hallway, seeing the buildings, seeing the admins in the hallways. So thank you to everyone who did such a wonderful job readying the buildings and making them available to us in advance of starting the school year. It was great.
Thank you.
I agree. We were just talking about that and how wonderful everything was, just sparkling today at Mohawk Ave, and Helen Morgan and all the other open houses have gone really well. So we're really appreciative. I got to speak with a member of our custodial staff today who showed me the new great blacktop that has been extended in the playground at Mohawk Ave and how they're just waiting on that equipment to get the basketball hoops in. So really great. It'll be even better with a path, right? Work on that. But we're just, my children were very excited to see it. So it takes a lot of pride in that. So thank you to our teachers and staff.
I'm going to piggyback on that and thank you, and also to wish everybody good luck. Students, teachers, families, all of our administrators, good luck, and welcome back to what is shaping up to be a pretty normal year. So, good. All right, we are going to convene into closed session. Oh, I know, I looked, I didn't see.
Yeah, I just wanted to recognize Coach Frank Marciano. He was just recognized at the Giants football game as one of the top high school football coaches in the state, along with several others. So congrats to him. Hence the shirt I'm wearing. My shirt. Nah, that's good.
Good. Anyone else? Okay, we are going to convene into closed session now. Whereas Section 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, PL 1975, provides for the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, and whereas the Sparta Township Board of Education is of the opinion that such circumstances exist to discuss confidential student matters, which is exempt from public participation pursuant to New Jersey Public Law 1975, Chapter 231, Open Public Meetings Act. Now, therefore, be resolved that the Sparta Township Board of Education shall enter into executive session on August 25th, 2022 at 8:38 p.m. The board will reconvene in public session at the conclusion of the executive session. The information discussed during the executive session will be disclosed to the public as soon as it is determined by the board that the information is no longer confidential. We expect to be probably about a half hour, and action may be taken. Yep. Okay, and it does. The action that may be taken pertains to a residency issue. Can I have a motion to go into closed session, please? Neve, thank you. Second?
Second.
Lauren, thank you. Discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, we'll be back on in about a half hour. And we're going to resume open session.
Yeah. A roll call.
Can I have a roll call, please, Joanne?
Mr. McKernan?
Here.
Ms. Seelander?
Here.
Ms. Collier?
Here.
Ms. Miller?
Here.
Dr. Serrano? Ms. Grano?
Here.
Mr. Morris? Here. Mr. Paleski?
Here.
Yeah.
I can get it quickly.
Just hold on 1 second.
Hold on, I gotta find the actual name.
We just have one piece of information we're going to get before we close.
Just give me 1 second. Bear with me, as you attorneys say. It was, this one, right? First name? So, 510 124. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, we do have one resolution that we do need to vote on that Mr. Zittermer's going to read.
Okay. Resolution for the residency hearing of pupil ID number 510124. Whereas on December 22nd, 2021, the Sparta Board of Education Residency Committee held a residency hearing for the above-referenced student, and whereas on that date, the parents of the above-referenced student attended the hearing, and whereas the committee, after having heard and considered all of the proofs and testimony presented, recommended to the full board that it not disenroll the student at that time based upon evolving matrimonial/custody circumstances, and that it revisit the matter at the end of the school year. Now therefore be it resolved that the board finds that the above-referenced student is not domiciled in Sparta Township and is not legally entitled to attend school in the district, and further orders that the student be disenrolled, and be it finally resolved that written notice of this decision and the family's right to appeal same before the Commissioner of Education shall be served upon the parents as required by the law.
Thank you. Can we make a motion to accept the resolution?
Motion.
Patrick, thank you. Kurt, thank you for the second. Discussion? Joanne, can you do a roll call, please?
Mr. McKernan?
Yes.
Ms. Seelander?
Yes.
Ms. Collier?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Grano? Mr. Morris? Mr. Paleski?
Yes. I believe that's all. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Kurt, thank you. Second. Neve, thank you. Discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Good. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.